Hey Trails Collective, Ian here. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about specifically the Topo Mtn Racer. Topo, a brand that we've carried in the shop for a few years, has probably made the most gains of any brand that we've carried over the past maybe 4 months in the shop coming out of the fall of 2019. I myself have gone through I think 4 or 5 different Topo models at this point. And continuing to just feel what the brand's about, the evolution, the materials, and I've been pretty excited about where they've been going. They as a company, even though they don't have as much maybe brand recognition as many of the other brands at this point, I think they're going to get there. They just landed an account, I believe, with REI, which is pretty fresh, which should be great for the company and for sure more available for many of you looking to try them on in store. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the evolution for me, just in short order, of some of the other Topo models and how I arrived at the Mtn Racer. And then we'll focus in on maybe talking just for a second about the TerraVenture, another one of their models that we'll do in a subsequent review here on the Trails Collective. So the Topo Mtn Racer, designed or really intentioned to be a mountain racing shoe or a light hiking shoe. And I think it really feels just like that underfoot. I think there's some thought or assumption that it's going to feel like a really lightweight racer. And while it is impressively light at 9.9 ounces in men and 7.7 in women's, it definitely has the protection of a shoe that's more substantial. The midsole that they use in the Mtn Racer is an injected EVA midsole, and it's quite a bit firmer and in that sense more responsive than some of the other midsole materials that Topo has used. And in that sense, I think it is appropriate for racing in that it makes it more responsive. The outsole rubber that they're using here is a Vibram Mega Grip. Adds maybe a little bit of weight, but more traction and durability than some of the other rubbers that they use on the shoes. So it makes it, I think, also appropriate for mountain racing or trekking, but I think it also is a little bit firmer underfoot than some of the others. And so I think that those two couple to create a stiffer platform in the Mtn Racer. So in that regard, I think it pretty much speaks to what it's designed for. The stack heights of it is fairly substantial. It's a 30-25, including the insole, so 30 millimeters in the heel, 25 in the forefoot for an offset or drop of 5 millimeters higher in the heel. Substantial stack versus some of the others that we're reviewing, and outside of brands like Hoka, which just have a higher or larger stack heights. The amount of, I think, protection in the combination of the injected midsole material in the EVA paired with a Vibram Mega Grip outsole gives it substantially more protection, at least on under my foot, than some of the other models that I've been running or testing or really loving. So one of the test runs that I took just playing with it yesterday, based here in Ithaca, we don't have as much rocky terrain as maybe some of the other areas around us in the region. Some of the races that I've run in Pennsylvania for sure have more rock gardens, Catskills, Adirondacks for sure. You're getting hit with more technical terrain than we have around here. Hudson Valley, rock gardens all over the place. So around here, to kind of get the test, in addition to a couple slopey offshoots with some rocks, I took it on some sloped railroad beds to really get the feel of that impact of the rock. And I can tell you it's a pretty substantial difference underfoot, especially for how light the shoe is versus some of the other models that I tested. The stiffness of the shoe, though, at least on one of my teammates and employees, Amelia, who will weigh in more of the written review, and we also have it on the foot of another one of my teammates, Jim Jansen. For her, it just felt like it was a little bit too stiff underfoot, that it didn't have the flexibility that she really loves in the TerraVenture. So it definitely has a unique feel. In the Mtn Racer, Topo is using a ripstop nylon upper. Right out of the box, for me, it felt just a little bit crinkly, a little bit crunchy. It comes with a notice in the box that's cueing you into the look of the material may be a bit funky, and to kind of go with it, it'll wear in. but for me, not really a big deal. But what was the feel? And when I first put it on, I was just getting some clicks out of the fabric. And if I can find that clip, I'll cue it in here in this video. But it does break in, and the benefit is the long term should be pretty durable. Traditionally, when shoe companies were using a mesh upper paired with stitched on overlays, it's possible that some people would get a point of weakness right where the overlay stitched on, and they'd get a blowout at that spot. So with the ripstop upper with the laminated overlays, just creates more of a mono upper, which without those weak spots. So I'm looking forward to see how this really wears over time. Fairly common with the Topo trail line, they have what they call the fish gill drainage points on the lateral side as well as the medial side. And I think it's a pretty cool design. I don't know if necessarily the openings in the material there are as porous as they could be, but you could probably needle in and open those up a little bit more on your own. The rear of the shoe on the upper also has two attachment points here for a dedicated Topo gaiter. It's a little tricky because it doesn't make it as applicable with a standard or over-the-counter gaiter from other brands, but it's pretty slick how it hooks on and then just wraps around the toes. The upper, for me, I didn't have a problem with getting a pretty secure fit. Topo, like some of the other shoes that I've reviewed with the Saucony Mad River or with Ultras, have a signature anatomically designed toe box, just boxier or more oblique. For me, that's a really great fit. Decently wide in the midfoot, so it doesn't pinch too much. Some shoes that have been really narrow in the midfoot, whether it be some from Salomon or in the case of Saucony with the Peregrine, I just felt like it was too narrow and it would bite and would cause more friction and blistering over the long miles, and particularly technical miles in a race or longer training run. So I think the fit's been pretty good. A pretty thin tongue, just spot padding, and it also has a bit of a gusset that you could probably, tough to see on the camera, but to keep some of the debris out. A little bit more depth than some of other models, similar to the Nike Kiger 5, which just is a bit shallower there. I really appreciate having a bit of the depth that the Mountain Racer offers. So it's one that out of the box, and I'm still in the opening miles, that I'm pretty excited to keep giving a go to, but definitely it is going to be a more technical shoe. Again, although it feels and is really lightweight, it's definitely firmer underfoot, and it's really designed to be just that. So one of the things, though, that I did find in talking about or speaking to the design of the mesh gills for drainage, Topo's using a OrthoLite insole in several of their shoes, including the Mountain Racer. Out of the box, it provides some cushion, which is great, and a little bit of an offset to the firmer midsole. But what I found in some of the runs and the wear testing specifically was while going through water, coming out the other side in terms of quick drainage, I felt like I was hearing pistons in the rear foot of the shoe. Mountain Racer, as well as to a certain extent the MT3, TerraVenture would do the same. And I was curious of really what that sound was coming from. And the shoe felt like it was draining fine, but I felt like I got a, again, piston sound and suction out of the hindfoot. I was testing several shoes the other morning, and I set them aside to dry, and what I found after a full, I think it was probably 8 or 10 hours when I was about to leave the shop picking the shoes up, was that the OrthoLite insole was still chock full of water, whereas some of the other models had dried right out. And it was pretty, I guess, impressive how much the OrthoLite insole held in terms of water. So I think the benefit that you're getting from the drainage of the shoe and the gills is unfortunately offset by this insole. So while it's comfortable for those for those runners that maybe go with the Mountain Racer, if you're going to be on a course or go for runs where you're going to have significant water penetration or crossing, switching out this insole for something else may be something you may want to consider. So getting here for the Mountain Racer, other things that I've tried and maybe weighing in on how I arrived here. One of the first ones that I started with in the Topo lineup was the TerraVenture. Great shape, feels more consistent underfoot than some of the other models that I was aligning it next to. For instance, the Ultra Lone Peak at the time was the 4, now the 4.5. This seemed to sit right in between the Lone Peak and the Timp. more noticeably cushioned underfoot. The outsole traction was a little bit more spaced, uses a Vibram outsole rubber as well, had a little bit more traction, and an offset of 3 millimeters here with a little bit lower stack height. This felt great out of the box. What I noticed though around at least my neck of the woods was that it felt a little too firm in the forefoot. The TerraVenture is one that does use a rock plate in the forefoot. And for some areas that are probably rockier than my backwoods here, some people may really like that rock plate, and it may be a good thing. But for me, it just felt like it left the shoe paired with a firmer Topo midsole just a bit too rigid. One that I moved into from there, which seemed like a really good blend, pretty similar stack height, midsole material. It loses the Vibram outsole, so it wasn't quite as tacky, but had a lot of the same parameters that I liked in the TerraVenture was the MT3. And what I was pretty excited about was this was potentially a version of the TerraVenture that just ditched the rock plate. And what I found was it did just that. The shoe runs roughly a half size, quarter size short. So in this one, even in a size 11, which is my size, I was brushing up against the front. But what I found was it was great underfoot. Fairly low stack height, but the midsole foam kept it feeling pretty responsive. Would cross over varied terrain, including hard pack, pretty well. It's just what it lost was some of the tackiness and some of the slicker crossings where the Vibram really grabbed. With that, I also wanted to check out the Mountain Racer. And the one that I haven't really spoke to, and which we're going to review in another clip, which I think is a pretty great blend in bringing a lot of those pieces or components together from Topo, is the UltraVenture here. A teammate, Amelia, an employee's favorite shoe coming out of the fall of 2019. Similar stack height to the Mountain Racer in that it uses a 30-25 for a 5 millimeter offset. But what's different is it uses a multi-density EVA as opposed to injected EVA. And the midsole foam just ends up being softer, more pliable. The Vibram outsole still has good traction, maybe not quite as much as the Mega Grip with this XS compound, but it gives you a lot of the same benefits. Also drainage ports, gives you the gator clip in the back. It has a little bit more traditional mesh in the upper, which adds a little bit of weight. More padding, a little bit more padding maybe around the heel collar. Again, adds a little bit of weight, but a really great blend. So we're going to put some miles into these. I think this is where maybe I'm going to come down in Topo. But so far, great brand, great evolution of the brand. Style's been, I think, getting better and better aesthetically, which definitely helps get it on more feet. And so we're going to follow up. I'll put more models into the, or miles into the Topo Mountain Racer. If it's around you, definitely try it on. I think it's definitely one to try, particularly for those over more technical terrain. And we'll follow up when we have more miles in it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll connect more soon.